Do you remember this African president who dared the World Health Organization to the point of even banning it in his country? The late John Magufuli, the president of Tanzania. He was called an upright man after Thomas Sankara. Very straightforward. One of the leaders who actually took initiative to stop the luxurious spending of the government. Now, the question is, could there be something that we were missing that he was telling us about the COVID-19 pandemic that they're not telling us? Do you also remember when he said these words, and let me quote, "We have had a number of viral diseases, including AIDS and measles. Our economy comes first. It must not slip. Life must go on." Yet the World Health Organization was bashing countries for not taking COVID-19 pandemic seriously, despite the number of African cases being super low. And we saw Tanzania going on about their lives as usual while the rest of the world was wearing masks. And up to date, the cases are still said to be low. And among the people criticizing the World Health Organization was President Donald Trump of the United States government. Okay, here's the news. The US government, through Donald Trump, has announced the decision to pull out of the World Health Organization. And this is not the first time. First time he hinted was in May 2020, when he gave a number of reasons why he doesn't want to keep joining a charade such as the World Health Organization. I'm calling it because that's what he means, right? So the WHO, according to Trump, said it failed to adequately obtain, vet, and share information in a timely manner. This was due to regular themes of Trump's criticisms to the World Health Organization. And he also said the World Health Organization consistently ignored credible reports that the virus was spreading from China. That was in December 2019, even earlier than that. So he still has an idea that the World Health Organization had something to hide about this whole pandemic. Now, the claim too was that through the middle of January, the World Health Organization parroted the idea that there was no human-to-human transmission of COVID-19. This was Trump trying to warn the world, to say the World Health Organization was not being upfront about the whole thing with COVID-19. It was like they were hiding some information. And even on the 14th of January, World Health Organization said, I quote, "Preliminary investigations conducted by the Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission." Yet there was. So this became an issue with Trump. So his basis of closing down the World Health Organization is actually justified. If you notice, the examples of claims that I've given of Trump kind of resonated with what John Magufuli said, but due to unknown circumstances surrounding his untimely passing, and some people would actually say there were unnatural casualties that led to Magufuli's death on the 17th of March 2021. And Trump has had a couple of attempts as well on his life. Again, let me say, there could be something we are missing from this whole COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I know some people might think this is great news, and obviously the US is a sovereign country and one of the powerhouses, and obviously they're trying to push for reform to try to gather funds in their country, which is understandable. But I believe also this could set the stage for a very serious global epidemic of all sorts. I mean, let's take a look at this. My other mind is also telling me that with the state of affairs in some third world countries who don't prioritize the healthcare systems of their countries, the possibility of having another pandemic are higher than you think, especially without much funding of the World Health Organization. I mean, in 2017, my own president in Zimbabwe was flown to South Africa to get treated after being poisoned. Imagine a country that is failing to just deal with a poisoning case. Now imagine if another case of malaria or measles or even Ebola breaks out in a country like that. What could actually happen? And I even remember Julius Malema, who even threatened the vice president of Zimbabwe again, Constantino Chiwenga, who had gone to South Africa to get treated. He was threatening that he was going to chase him out of South Africa to go and fix the hospitals in Zimbabwe. Now, I'm pretty sure the whole cabinet in Zimbabwe obviously uses medical aids in South Africa. They have to declare that they are using any medical aids in Zimbabwe. I'm pretty sure they're all flocking to South Africa. Now, the question is, who is exposed to these diseases?
It's you.
You are being exposed to these diseases because your leaders are not taking charge of the situation in the country. Now, back to Tanzania. The relationship between Tanzania and the World Health Organization has experienced tensions, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic. They had a fallout until Magufuli obviously had a sudden death, which is kind of like dodgy to even think of it, to say you are in a constant battle with a World Health Organization body and all of a sudden you have an untimely death, which is suspicious. What if we ask ourselves a question, could it be linked to some certain things or narratives that Donald Trump knows, but he is not telling the world about it? Now, Trump has always been outspoken about the whereabouts of the World Health Organization, and now we have reached to a point where he has decided to part ways with the World Health Organization. But in as much as we may create theories about this whole World Organization thing, there is another side of the World Health Organization that we don't know. The World Health Organization isn't just another international body. It is the backbone of global health responses. I mean, countries without any healthcare facilities that are viable, without strong healthcare systems, countries that are struck by pandemics like the Ebola in West Africa and cholera outbreaks and even COVID-19, the World Health Organization was there, and it was often the only line of defense because the governments were not upfront to help in cases where they needed more of the defense. Now, the decision doesn't just affect the American people. It reverberates across the whole entire world, particularly in vulnerable countries and nations that rely on World Health Organization's expertise, resources, even the funding to prevent and control from health emergencies. So what does this actually mean for the world? First, it means that we're going to have reduced funding for critical health programs. The US has been one of the largest contributors of World Health Organization, funding nearly 18% of its budget. So this money supports life-saving programs in vulnerable nations, programs that are fighting diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV and AIDS. Without this funding, these initiatives will face major setbacks, leaving millions at potential risk. Now, the second thing is that it's going to weaken global response to health emergencies. Remember the nature of diplomacy. Most countries are just copycats of what the US chooses as a policy. Remember what happened when the Russian government invaded Ukraine. We saw countries like UK, Canada, and EU member states sanctioning Russia. What if for some reason we just have a domino effect and we see other countries following suit in defunding the World Health Organization? What is the potential problem with that? Now, could there be a similar case that could happen? I doubt sometimes, because when Trump declared that they're going to pull out of the Paris Agreement on climate change, many allies, including European Union and China, continued their commitments to the agreement. When a pandemic hits Africa, it won't look at who is African or who is American. It still hits each and every one of us. So providing healthcare in third world countries is not for their own benefit, but for everyone's benefit. I mean, even if you're an affluent person, you are still susceptible to getting one of the most fatal pandemics in the world. This does not mean that we are not going to ignore the fact that many people are actually going to suffer from these consequences. Remember when COVID-19 came, everyone thought, oh, it's just going to be in China. Everyone thought it's just going to be wherever they are. But we started seeing cases of people who are now being fatally unalived by this pandemic. The World Health Organization has actually helped the world to recover from the so-called pandemics. Ebola outbreak in West Africa, 2014 to 2016. when Ebola struck Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, and it became the deadliest outbreak, killing over 11,000 people. But who coordinated an international response, deploying healthcare workers, setting up a treatment center in each and every village to make sure that there is vaccination for Ebola? So without this intervention, the world could have been reeling off a pandemic that is incurable. But World Health Organization was being helpful, and believe you me, there is a lot of things and conspiracies that we can come up with to talk about the World Health Organization. But when a pandemic comes, it doesn't choose the rich, it doesn't choose who has borders or not. It cuts across borders, because eventually we all breathe the same air. Even if it starts in Africa, it started in China. And how many miles is it from China to America? So pandemics have taught us that health is shared beyond borders. It doesn't respect borders, the color of your skin. And COVID-19 taught us that we all breathe the same air eventually, rich or poor. Hence COVID-19 saw the rich being exposed to something that was fatal to the poor, and no monetary value could salvage the situation. Many people realize that the health of the globe is more important than individual health. And this is exactly what happens when countries like the US decide to pull out of very, very essential organizations. So the US withdrawal is sending shockwaves through the international community. Obviously, we have leaders who are just irresponsible in Africa, leaders who are irresponsible in third world countries, who are always hiding behind the World Health Organization. But this is far beyond their incompetence. This is far beyond anyone's doing. But like I said in my introduction, there's something we are unaware of, that God knows what happened. So behind the scenes, something might be happening, and who knows? But this is something serious, because in as much as the World Health Organization is not important to some or certain people, it will affect each and every one of us. We may want to admit or not, but this is about to turn bad. But anyways, the US only contributes 18% of the global health system. So we still have Germany, who is the biggest funder, still have the UK, only until they pull out as well. But God knows we don't want that to happen, because there are countries that rely on such expertise, they rely on such services. And with that, I want to say thank you. Until next time.